When she was born, she already had problems feeding, so I was trying to breastfeed her, and things just got worse and worse. When she was about 8 weeks old, she had to be hospitalized because she completely stopped feeding. Until that point, her pediatrician, her doctors told me that she had reflux because she had that typical presentation. So she would feed, she would come off, she would arch her back, and you can't speak to a baby, right? So you diagnose babies based on their symptoms. And so with that typical presentation, she was diagnosed with reflux, and she was put on reflux medications one after another to maximum dose, and nothing helped. And then things got so bad that when she stopped feeding, she got so dehydrated, she had to be hospitalized. Up until that point, I had practiced as a conventionally trained medical doctor. I was a family physician at the time, believing everything that had been trained in, that paradigm of one pill for every ill. I never questioned anything up until that point. As I watched them put that tube down my daughter's nose into her stomach, and the struggle, her cry, something just snapped at me. I started to wonder, do I really know everything I need to know? Why is it that the one person I wanted to help the most in the world, I couldn't help with all those years of training? By that point, I'd already been 5 years of medical school in the UK. I did residency in both internal medicine and family practice. So it's not like I was lazy and didn't do my work, right? I just didn't know what I was looking for. Neither did her doctor. So I actually delved into the research to try and save her life because nobody knew what was going on with her. They started to hypothesize that she had a behavioral disorder. That was kind of like, no, I'm not taking this anymore. There is no baby with a deep behavioral disorder. I went back into the research because of my background. I have this understanding of the human body that I can do the research. I found a paper from 1983 that described cow's milk protein allergy, and the symptoms matched hers. I talked to her pediatrician to switch her milk because by that point she was in such a bad way that I couldn't get milk out of my diet to continue breastfeeding her because it would take 4 weeks for milk proteins to come out of my breast milk. So we switched her to this hypoallergenic formula called Neocate, and within a week she was better. So she was diagnosed with cow's milk protein allergy. I remember speaking to her allergist and asking, why does she have this allergy? This is so strange. Neither my husband or I have any allergies. The doctor said, oh, it's just one of those things, probably genetic. I think that was the beginning of my rabbit hole of digging further and further into what I had missed at medical school, and initially started with me wanting to help my daughter recover. And thankfully now she's grown out of all her allergies. But through that process, I realized that all the symptoms I had been told by my own doctor that was normal were not normal at all. There were root causes that were causing them. When I addressed them, I felt better. So initially, I was trying to find out why she was allergic. Never made sense that why she would develop an allergy when I didn't have any allergies. My husband doesn't have any allergies. And it was such a severe allergy that put her into hospital too, right? It's not just like there's a little bit of runny nose or rash. I then came across research that showed the effect of environmental toxins on our immune system. So that was my first olive branch into the world of environmental toxins that I never learned about at medical school. And then I came across this research paper on mercury and how it dysregulates the immune system to promote the Th2, which is the allergic arm of the immune system. And I thought, my mouth is full of amalgams. And I knew that amalgams were around 50% mercury. I know they're not silver, but I did question, is this safe? Is this stuff safe in my mouth? The conventional way of thinking around amalgam is that, oh, it's safe, it doesn't vaporize and all of that. And I believed what my conventional dentist told me when he put those in. But then because of me wanting to try to get to the root cause of this allergy, I started to think about whether mercury could be at the root. I read about leaky gut and how food proteins could be much bigger particles, could be leaking into my bloodstream, and that could be crossing through breast milk and eliciting an immune response in her. So all of these came together. It's the world of environmental toxins, nutrition. I wasn't doing any of the stuff that I talk about now. I ate the worst diet, burning candles, using perfume, like all toxins everywhere in my house. And so slowly I started to make changes one step at a time She literally just had one patch of very slight eczema behind her ear. That cleared. And then I was like, oh. And then little things, her colic got better as I changed my diet because we were eating high sugar and a very high inflammatory diet. I think all of those things contributed to her healing. And then eventually I started to feel better. My migraines were gone, my brain fog, my fatigue. And I thought, wow, this is powerful. I didn't treat myself with anything. There were no medications involved, but I feel so much better. I had lived with all these symptoms for years and years. My labs all came back normal when I went to my doctors with brain fog, fatigue, acne, and they just told me this is normal. I feel like my daughter was my silver lining in a way. That pain led me to uncover a whole world that I have been able to help myself and other people. And you also have to know what lab to run, right? My doctors never ran any labs looking for toxicity in me. That's why they said I was normal. They weren't looking in the right place. It's like that parable from India, I think, where, the 6 blind men and the elephant. 6 blind men were trying to assess what an elephant is. So the one blind man who's standing by the side of the elephant said, oh, it's just like a wall. And then the man standing by the leg said, oh, it's the tree. The one standing by the tail said, oh, it's the road. In conventional medicine, we're so honed in on the part, right? And then we just say, well, that's your diagnosis, when we really need to be stepping away and looking at the whole picture of the human body as a whole, and then deciding what labs to run so that we don't get back into this way of like, oh, the kidney is just a kidney, if not connected to your heart. We know about the gut microbiome, for example. We know that it affects practically every part of your body. And I feel like if you're just the gut, it's like every organ communicates with another organ or the rest of the body. We need to start pigeonholing symptoms into these things and start thinking what's at the root cause. Because sometimes when you address the root cause, you're actually affecting so many different symptoms at the same time. Well, I feel like most people don't have environmental toxins on their radar. So that should be on the radar, because when you look at NHANES data, so that's the biomonitoring data done by the CDC of toxicants in American blood levels, everybody has some sort of toxicant in their blood, right? So it's a ubiquitous problem. So why are doctors not looking for it when patients come into the office? It should be part of standard assessment, in my opinion. But the one that I was most focused on was Mercury, because I had my amalgams, and I believe that that was a big part of contributing to my leaky gut, my symptoms of migraines, brain fog, fatigue, acne, because these environmental toxins, they don't just affect one organ system. They affect processes throughout your body. They can affect your hormones. They can affect your gut health, cause leaky gut. A lot of them are neurotoxins, so they can directly damage your brain cells. They actually damage the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse, the battery inside all of our cells, right? And if you damage the battery inside the cell, that cell cannot function. It depends on where that cell is as to what your symptoms then manifest as, right? So if it's a liver cell, you can't regulate your blood sugar properly. Your cholesterol is also out of whack. If it's a cell in your ovary or in your testicles, you have sex hormone disturbance, your fertility might be affected. It's because it can hide under so many different symptoms. The key is that it's so insidious, right? We're not exposed to huge amounts. The way we typically study toxicology is that we expose these lab animals to huge doses of a substance, and then we watch for effects maybe for a day or two, or at the most like a month or a few months, right? It's never followed up for 10 years, 20 years. And that's at the point at which we start to see problems, because our bodies are so resilient. It's always trying to correct and make up for the mistakes and the bad things that we do to it, right? So it has that degree of give until the point where it's just like, okay, I've had enough. I'm not taking anymore. And then that's when you get your diagnoses. I think that it's a hidden problem because you don't see that in immediate cause and effect. Most people don't connect exposures with the downstream effects. It's something that we need to incorporate into our lifestyle, given how much environmental toxins there are in our everyday lives, so that we don't test the system. I like to talk about environmental toxins like a bathtub. The explosions are coming in through the faucet. And as long as the drain is working properly, that bathtub never overfills, right? It's only when it overfills that you start to get symptoms and diseases. So we need to make sure that whatever's coming in through the faucet is reduced, and also that we have a clear drainage system, which is detoxification. There are just so many different tests for different toxins out there. But there are some good overall surrogate markers that you can run in your blood to tell you whether there may be a disturbance. So for example, your liver function, particularly ALT, which is a liver marker, can start to derange very early on. That range is huge, right? The acceptable level, depending on what lab you run, but generally anything up to 35 or 50 is acceptable. But if you have a high toxic load, derangement might look like 20. But then your doctor will say, well, you're normal, it's fine, everything's fine. But it's not. You've got to compare it to what your baseline level is. Maybe it was 5, and 5 going to 10 is significant, right? And then there's gamma GT as well. That's a very sensitive marker for toxicants. If you actually drink a glass of wine and you go and get your gamma GT done the next day, it will be deranged. So that's quite a sensitive one. There's also urinary markers of oxidative stress, because what these toxins do is that they cause oxidative stress, which is an imbalance of free radicals and antioxidants in our body. Free radicals are things that damage our DNA, our cells. These can lead to cancer down the line. We don't want these free radicals in our body, but they are normally produced as part of respiration, as part of metabolism in the mitochondria. So that's why we have an antioxidant system and antioxidants in our diet to try and mop those up. But environmental toxins actually cause a rise in your free radicals. So if you don't have enough antioxidants to mop them up, they start to cause inflammation, oxidative damage. And there is a marker called 8-hydroxydeoxyguanosine. It's a mouthful, but it's 8-OHDG. That's the kind of abbreviation we use. If that starts to go up, that tells you that the environmental toxins are now causing some damage in your body. So my levels was super high, even though I was supposedly eating a very healthy diet. But the amount of toxicity in my body was causing so much oxidative stress that the antioxidants just wasn't enough anymore. Other than that, you can look for inflammation. And then beyond that, you really need to be looking at specific toxicant. Lead is surprisingly common. I'm just seeing a lot of ladies who are postmenopausal come to me with a high lead level. And I feel it may be the cumulative exposure, because we store lead in our bones. And after menopause, you start to get more bone turnover where bone is released. And that's why a lot of postmenopausal women can have osteoporosis, right? So the lead is released from the store in bone, and that's why they start to get high levels. Glyphosate in the US is high. And I myself eat mostly organic. I don't eat all organic, but I eat mostly organic. And when I tested myself, I was on the 75th percentile. And that's on a population of people who live in the US who are exposed. It's kind of scary. So I check my levels every year and it goes up and down, but I've never got to below 50th percentile for glyphosate. We want to be careful, but we don't want to be extreme to the point where we can't enjoy our lives and then we're stressed out. The first thing to do is to minimize your exposure. We can't minimize exposure 100% of the time. At the same time, we need to support the detox organs so that they can move those toxins out of our bodies efficiently. The way you do that is not through detox kits, because we have these organs inside of us that already can do that job. We are in that stressed out sympathetic dominant state, which means that detox organs are shut down, right? Detox organs are not going to function when you're trying to run away from a tiger, which is what the stress response is telling your body. So detox is actually an active process requiring energy and a lot of different nutrients. So if you do a cleanse or a juice fast, what you're doing is just avoiding the traditional inflammatory foods for a week. And of course, you're going to feel better. You're going to drop pounds, but you're not detoxing, right? Detoxing means supporting your liver, sweating, exercise, sleeping.